We're here to compare notes, uh, I think, and partly what I invited you here to do, or we invited each other, is to share a different concept of electricity than you're doing, which is this impeccable scientific analysis of the impact of electric fields.
Right.
And we had you on the show, I think, in September, October. We took our tour of Love Canal that day,
Yeah.
100th Street. We haven't done the chemical electrical mix program yet. That's another one, I think. How many of the chemicals in the ground there were from the electrical industry? But I wanted to share some ideas and then field your questions from the field department. We have a
Yeah.
field,
Yeah. Yeah. For
we have
sure.
an electrical field day.
Yeah.
Hey, that's what the students have now. They have electrical field day. They go out and they roam around the Wi-Fi networks. So, just can you introduce yourself a little bit now that I've been gabbing and doing my terrible goyish stand-up comedy?
Oh, sure. Sure.
And
Yeah. I guess we're recording, right?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. No. So thank you, Eric, for having me on. My name is Roman Shapoval. My better three quarters is not here today, Bodana Diduch. But what we do is we help people power on with light, power off at night. I was a former tech salesman selling computers for a good 15 years of my life, and it made me miserable. I got burnt out, depressed, addicted, and went to a rehab in New Mexico and really turned my whole life around. I kind of, the same force that was pushing me to do that job and to get out of it was the same force that made me better, and that was the suffering that I saw from my mother who passed away from cancer, my grandparents who passed away from cancer, and I was never really given any good answers as to why they were sick. Doctors would belittle me, and then when I found out about the whole electromagnetic field component of our health, not to say that that's the only cause of cancer, but it made me question, why was I never told this? And then when I did find out about a link that was also being suppressed since 1998, the research of Henry Lai, then I really started to go down the rabbit hole. And when Bodana got sick with depression and burnout on our honeymoon from a combination of things, from taking too many misprescribed psychotropic drugs and antidepressants and birth control, which she got off of. The only thing that really helped her was to get outside and get sunlight, and that's really what propelled me forward and propelled us forward to spread that message of what is natural light, what is invisible light, and what are those invisible, imperceptible environments, like Marshall McLuhan talked about. How is that affecting us?
hmm
And that's why, yeah, I'm really excited to be here today because, I don't have too much experience with McLuhan. You have a lot more, but I do know a little bit about it. And uh, yeah, so I'm just really excited to be here and kind of untangle all the web of it all so we can make sense of where we are today and where we're going.
fabulous. And please ask questions on behalf of your viewers, which will probably be a lot of the same questions that somebody would ask on in my audience. So I've been kind of gradually brainwashing my readers with McLuhan's ideas since the first article I wrote was in 2016. I've got it up on the screen here. I'm going to read a quote in a second from Marshall's son Eric, and the interesting thing is that you're making discoveries that talk about the effect of these fields on the physical bodies probably by way of the energy bodies. I mean, we are basically kind of glorified mushy electromagnets.
Mhm.
And McLuhan's whole approach was essentially sociological and psychological. So I don't think he ever addressed issues of health other than mental health. And he never framed it that way, but it's clear that he was concerned that this is affecting people's minds and our concept of the body. So the crazy part is that it's even subtler because I'm going to, in a little while, I'm going to bring up something about the advent of telegraph, which in no way could have affected large numbers of people. One wire strung between Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Right? It's very, very low voltage. The field has got to be immeasurable at any distance, but it's there. And it may, without speculating too far, who knows, maybe there's a quantum field effect. It doesn't matter how small the disturbance is. It only has to be there because people didn't even really know about it, or maybe they read a little article that long in the newspaper. And also, before he accounts for any of the electrical stuff, he very carefully accounts for what print technology did to people. And this is not having any kind of a field effect. What he said print was doing was throwing off the equilibrium of the senses.
Mm-hmm.
And focused people out of tribal consciousness and into individualism.
Yeah, so you were going to read that quote because you took my job because I was going to read the quote, but I
you got no, definitely read away. I've read this one a lot of times, so yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, well,
we could take turns.
Yeah,
we should be poets,
Yeah, we should because you read it as a poem, but yeah, but anyway, so the quote is: "The body is everywhere assaulted by all of our media, a state which has resulted in deep disorientation of intellect and destabilization of our culture throughout the world. In the age of disembodied communication, the meaning of and significance and experience of the body is utterly transformed and distorted." And it even that quote itself makes me feel, I don't know, I couldn't even read it well because just reading distorted and all those words kind of brings it's just, I can imagine how McLuhan felt, well, his son, but also his father back in those times, right? Just having the foresight, but also seeing all those changes. It's kind of like you and we were born before the internet, right? So to a lot of people, that's crazy. But so we have that perspective, and that so many people don't right now.
But DARPANET did exist.
Mm.
And the attitudes and values predate what the known technology is. So where I think, and it was Eric who pointed this out to me because I got to talk to him a bunch of times and spend a whole day with him, which was fabulous. It was like a guitar student getting to spend a whole day with Jerry Garcia. Given the choice, I would have taken Eric McLuhan. I wasn't given the choice, but I got the one that I would have picked. Where was I going with that? Wait, what was the last thing I said before I got into Jerry Garcia?
I forget now. Yeah,
okay.
Disembodied.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Well, so I had a client write to me the other day, longtime client, Kat Berlin, and she said, "Please explain what you mean by digital disembodiment." And he's getting at it right here. It is the insanity we see in the world. It's not about your yoga poses. It's about who you think you are and who you hold yourself to be, who you believe you are. So it affects the mind tremendously, much quicker than it affects the body, disembodiment. It's disconnecting the mind from the body so that the mind is kind of floating around in the ethers. Mm-hmm. The way that I described it in an article a few months ago was, imagine if there was some global cataclysmic event that killed everyone all at the same time. But no one had a memory of the event, and we all reincarnated in a replica, an astral replica of the world with no memory of what had happened, and everything looks pretty much normal, but we're not in the physical world, we're in an astral replica of the world, under the rules of the astral replica of the world, not the rules of the physical world.
Mm.
That's kind of where we are under the influence of all this electricity and particularly digital.
Mm. Mm.
Right? Is that the extent of that problem? it's a,
Yeah,
it's a,
it is, kind of helps me make sense of it all because there was so much to talk about with the spiritual implications. I always wonder, well, why all of this? And that's what we were talking about before the quote was the telegraph, right? You were saying how there wasn't there maybe there was quantum effects, but um, maybe we can kind of to make sense of this or to start making sense of this. I think it's great to appreciate the history where we came from. So maybe if you can go through the advent of the telegraph and how that's linked to some of our collective suffering. Uh, because many people, when they think of the telegraph, they don't think of it in terms of electricity. They just think in terms of communication. But as you've shown in a lot of your articles, and us as well, those every single war comes with a new technology. So is it the war causing the technology, or is it the technology causing the war?
oh,
Right?
both. Oh, both. Technology induces the war, and then warfare becomes the excuse for coming up with all kinds of new technology that's then put to use in the next war. But if we start with imitate the Monty Python sound of a person riding a horse, man. Before we were born, Roman, a man would walk down the road at approximately 3 to 4 miles an hour.
Mm.
Right? The hunting gathering peoples would hunt and gather at about 3 to 4 miles an hour, and your fastest warrior would maybe run 8 miles an hour or nine, right?
Mm.
Chasing a thing and throwing a harpoon at it.
Mm.
Then the next advent was the choo-choo train, which is capable probably of going 10 times faster. 70 miles an hour, 80, how fast the steam engine goes, 80, 90 at the fastest. It's getting dangerous.
Mm.
So we were up to the steam engine in 1844 when that fateful day. I believe it was a chess game between Baltimore and Washington. But and therefore it doesn't matter the content of the technology. It's the
Mm.
technology. And suddenly they're dotting and dashing chess moves at the speed of light, right? So first we're roaming around and man shows up in town and has a beer. and then walks with his dog. Oopsie, walks with his dog, and then the choo-choo train, and then speed of light, just like that. That's crazy. No, we're used to it. We're doing that right now. We are disembodied spirits. We're not only bilocating in real time, we could be on 100, 200 different computer screens, whatever, phone screens, iPads and iPods and everything simultaneously. And we think that's normal because we're accustomed to it, but it's crazy.
Mm. Mm.
It's almost unthinkable. I mean, yeah, I mean, before the science fiction of like the 1950s, I don't know when the first, concept of, instantaneous television communication, but TV sets were not, they were not a thing really till in experiments in the 30s and 40s, and then they start showing up in homes probably in the early 50s. I don't, but it'd be good to check the date of the first TV. But here we are, uh, communicating at the speed of light, and then we're like making a TV show in our
Yeah,
apartments or office, whatever.
even faster because I think we're even communicating in the future because the satellites they're programmed. I think it's an eighth of a second or something like that ahead, just so they can capture the data. Uh,
Ah, interesting.
yeah.
Okay, so but anyway, this is a lot quicker than a, choo-choo train ordering a cup of coffee in the diner, um, and getting up and having breakfast. So this was a shock, and 4 years later, in a place called Seneca Falls, New York, was the first, what is attributed to be the first, the founding of the women's movement in Seneca Falls. And when you look at this document that was created out of that meeting, called the Declaration of Sentiments, it is a declaration of war by the women who were there and some men against all men. One of the ways you know that it's a declaration of war is that it's a mock of the Declaration of Independence. The writers, Katie Stanton and whoever, steal Jefferson's language shamelessly in a way that's almost comical. And the Declaration of Independence is a declaration of war on the King of England. Plain and simple. Basically, they're saying, screw you guys, I'm going home, and I'm going to throw you out. And so women declare war on men and claim the only purpose that men have had the entire duration of all of civilization was to enslave women. And that is a false claim. Every single claim, I've got an interview with Janice Fiamingo where we look at every claim in the Declaration of Sentiments, and they were either bald lies or grossly misleading, and the grossly misleading are far outnumbered by the bald lies. And the very interesting thing about the entire thing taken in total is that it is a statement by women that does not acknowledge the existence of children. Right? So how do you strive to redefine the terms on which men and women are going to relate to each other and pretend that children do not exist?
Well, that's part of that whole disembodiment, right, that you were talking about.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going. That this is disembodiment. And look, we can all agree that maybe women had some gripes and all that stuff, but if women had gripes, every one of those statements in the Declaration of Sentiments wouldn't have needed to be a lie. Why not give the real gripes? Why not state a problem that's an actual problem? Well, they didn't. Every and but I think the dead giveaway, they tell on themselves when they don't mention children. So what they to me, this is first of all, it looks like a declaration of war on men, but really it's a letter of resignation of those women from the human race and a declaration of war between women against the women who wanted to stay embodied and who liked being mothers, who knew that was their natural role, who had no issue with that, who didn't think it was some kind of a conspiracy against them.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't blame men for creating. Look, I couldn't, if I had to invent the woman's body, I could not have done a better job. No way. I'm happy to have whoever made that thing. Congratulations. So you can't blame me or you for inventing women's bodies and reproductive roles, just like I can't blame the lady on the street walking out the dog for inventing my dick. She had nothing to do with it. We all were born into these bodies. So they're quitting the human race and they're declaring war on all the other women. This is serious. This war has not stopped. But then a mere 20 years later, the United States breaks out in the bloodiest war in its history. The country is ripped into parts, and they send all their young men to murder each other.
Mm.
The whole concept is it's so grievous and outrageous and horrifying that this is what ensued. And so McLuhan is pretty clear. I've got to think of where it's probably in the media in the Understanding Media book from '64 that the Civil War ensued in the environment of the telegraph. It was heavily used, as was train technology. And then, so this is a very big change in the society where this happened.
Mm.
And when people are ripped out of body, they have very very strange experiences. But see, it wasn't as overwhelming as the internet is for us, right? We are completely surrounded. I've got 4 webcams on my 5, if you count my laptop. I'm sitting in this cozy little spot, surrounded by cameras, multiple microphones. It's crazy. A telegraph line going across the countryside following some train tracks is not like that. No one is drowning in it, but people knew, and it shifted consciousness. And then I believe the telephone comes next. They go fairly efficiently from telegraph to telephone. Telephone was invented in 1876. So it's 32 years after the telegraph is the telephone, and now suddenly people can talk to each other.
So, well, Eric, sorry, just to back up, just to give your, if I can interrupt on the telegraph, just to insert my commentary with the electrical stuff. You know, Freud at that same time had invented the term anxiety nervosa and had told women that they were hysterical. So, you know, it's you have kind of like it's a contradictory thing in a way. Maybe I just can't make sense of it, but a lot of these women are listening to a man and accepting that they're hysterical, but they also don't like men. So it's
Oh, well,
right.
that
I'm just
is
saying.
core to the problem, yes. But how
Yeah.
many women read Freud, really? How many people read Freud?
No.
It wasn't like Grisham. I'm not talking about Stephen King here. Uh, but the idea was turned loose, and it's percolating through. But Freud had a disembodiment problem also, and this was his Eros Thanatos issue. So he begins his theory saying that sex is the driving force of consciousness and evolution and relating and like it's all about Eros. And then to appease the Nazis, this is later, this is in the next century, but it's where he was headed. The psychoanalytic group in Vienna basically renounces that theory, and they determine that actually it's Thanatos. And they count the death instinct as a healthy instinct in the psyche. Thanatos, the god of death. So this was, and they sure got plenty of it in the Third Reich. They got quite a lot of Thanatos. So he too kind of resigns from physicality because Thanatos, assuming it exists as such, is the drive to come out of your body.
Mhm. Oh, wow.
So yeah, and it is, he didn't, I don't think he understood women at all. I mean, at all. But he may observe things that were accurate. I mean, clearly I think that there was something in women that was uh, disqualifying them from full participation in rational society in the age of reason, basically. And this is not to disparage anyone. It is to say that there are. I don't believe that a woman is a social construct. I think that we are biological entities, and until we train ourselves otherwise, we are the sex that we are.
Mm.
And I think women can be incredibly brilliant, rational thinkers. I prefer women's brains. I prefer female intelligence. I've had a lot of fun doing law projects with men and talking to chess players. I've got an interview on the program tonight where chess comes up a lot. I mean, I have great fun with guys, but when it comes down to just the sheer pleasure of thinking, I prefer women's brains. But my brain is exactly a morph of male and female brain, which is why I can do astrology the way that I do it and so forth, and art the way that I do it. But it's not, most people are not that self-aware. They're not that self-conscious.
Mm. And now if yeah, and I too, I prefer having conversations with my wife than I mean, I like my conversations with my buddies, but that
Different.
that's a one track thing. Yeah, no, so
But that's
just
important. The one track thing is invent light bulb.
that's right.
Try 1,000 times.
Mm, yeah,
Right? That's
right.
not unlikely. Ladies in the audience, tell me, do you think that a woman could have tried 1,000 times to invent the light bulb and gotten it on the 1,000th time? Or would be like, okay, I've got to take care of the garden
Yeah,
and
that's right.
and so forth. This is God, 500 light bulbs. I think I want to embroider now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, men are much more like an arrow. They can be much more focused for good or bad, I think. And women are more that egg, the all encompassing,
Hmm.
all the potential. But just to touch on that anxiety thing, I think women are more hormonally sensitive. And well, I know they are. Their hormones are much more sophisticated. Their brains are different. But so when the telegraph arrived, anxiety nervosa was substituted as a term for neurasthenia, which most of the world already recognized as neurological distress and damage. So Freud was basically knowingly or unknowingly, but it was quite convenient for the corporations at the time that he came up with this term that that blamed women for their hysterics and let the telegraph and electricity off the hook for those potential symptoms of neurasthenia that anxiety nervosa
Were
had
they
now replaced.
blamed? Did people notice at the time that it's possible these technologies were having an effect?
Well, I don't think, well, some Dr. George Beard in New York City, he was a very reputable physician. He was coming out against it, but he got flack. And very few, when German physicists came out and said this was having an effect, but they were all suppressed. So there, it was a Freud took the main stage with that term, and that's how the whole anxiety thing started. So
But
it's
anxiety, this is anxiety, right? It's very
yeah.
important we put a pin
Mhm.
in the map there. Now,
Mhm.
Heidegger, a German philosopher, said he observed electricity. This is probably a little bit later, and said, this brings people out of their bodies. Therefore, it is spiritual. That is good.
Mm.
Not, yeah, not counting. And I haven't read this. I've not
Mm.
been able to find it. It's probably in German, but this
Mm.
is I've read this along the McLuhan Trail.
Mm.
That this was basically Heidegger's position, that he observed that electricity was a disembodying force and therefore spiritual, therefore positive. I guess following in the great Christian tradition that you're always better off dead.
Yeah, or what depends what spirits are positive for what spirits.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
sure. Jinns and all these evil things.
yeah.
Okay, so now we're talking to each other. Now, a very important effect of electricity is that it de-individuates people. And we had spent humans had spent the last how many thousand years first going through kind of handwritten scroll culture, and then with the advent of the printing press, in a Gutenberg press, in a time with very similar astrology as now, because that took place under a Chiron Eris conjunction in I guess around 1450 or so. The date is pinned down somewhere, but it's around the mid 15th century, and there are basically 10 orbits of Chiron for every one orbit of Eris. Uh, and of course, Eris moves through all the signs, so they're not going to meet up in Aries very often, but they are meeting up in Aries now, and it was in Aries at the evolution of the Gutenberg press. Just putting an astrological bookmark in there as far as how big of a time this is.
Okay, now Eric, sorry, just to interrupt. So Eris, if you can just tell people about it. So it has a cycle of what, every 250 years or something like that?
I think 554.
Oh, wow. And it's a planet that wasn't noticed until, it was noticed after Pluto,
Oh
right?
04. Pluto is 1930,
Uh-huh.
and Eris is discovered in oh 04, oh
Wow.
05, and then it's named in the summer of oh 06 and causes the demotion of Pluto.
Hmm.
This is what Eris is famous for, is causing the demotion of Pluto. That was a very corrupt political dirty deal, but nonetheless, in sequence, that's what happened. And without going too far into astrology, I have found that Eris is very significant in all the charts of major electrical developments, like the radio, for example.
Mhm.
Um, so, but just to draw the comparison between the Gutenberg era and our era, that's a big change. So for the next 500 years, print is making books. I mean, we think about the Bible like it always existed. But before the Gutenberg press, it was a bunch of scrolls in synagogues and cathedrals. You couldn't just pick up the Bible. You certainly couldn't thump the Bible. It was on scrolls. And I guess when a boy was bar mitzvahed, it was the same as it is now. They'd run around, they'd carry the Torah on a big scroll. But all Jewish kids who've been bar mitzvahed or bat mitzvahed, that was the technology of the Bible before the Gutenberg press. So suddenly, all the old books are being typeset, and people are learning to read en masse. And then over the course of that approximately 400 years, people are being individuated by print technology. That was the effect, was to detribalize. So it's the finishing touches of the detribalization of all of the scrolls and hieroglyphics and monastic things, and people influenced by the people who read the scrolls. But now suddenly the book is everywhere, and that had a radical and fast shift in society. It hardened up national borders, for example. How did it do that? It did that because for print you needed to make a difference between French and Spanish. Whereas when you were on the border of France and Spain, there wasn't like a guard at the gate, with a thing that went up. It was like, well, now we're sort of in Frenchy land, and now we're kind of in Spainy land. And on Frenchy Spainy border, they would eat different things and it'd be a little different, but it wasn't like, oh, border crossing. Now it's like with the earnest guy and the thing taking a picture of your eyeballs.
Yeah.
But the printing press, McLuhan said, tightened up the individual boundary, and it tightened up the national boundary, and it created nationalism.
Hmm.
And with the advent of electrical technology, particularly radio, that goes away overnight, and people are tribalized. And there's a beautiful example in the telephone of the breach of privacy, because what electrical technology does is it tribalizes, but it also messes with the concept of privacy. You must know about the party line, the phone line, right? You know about the concept of the party line?
That's when other people can listen in, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, because there weren't very many phone lines. So all the houses had a share,
Mhm.
5 or 6 houses had a share of phone line. And even when I was a kid and very curious about the phone system, there were still several ring patterns on the Bell telephone system. Ring, 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 or long, short, and then the normal ring, and you could dial a code into the phone, including the rotary, and the phone would call you back using the different ring patterns. The different ring patterns are a holdover of the party line era, where anyone could pick up their phone and listen to it. Anyone in any of those households were saying, and the operators who were in the county office could listen to any of the conversations, and suddenly no one's got any privacy anymore.
Well, yeah, because electricity is part of our bodies in a way. It's coming out of us, it's coming out of the earth, and we're sharing. So we're sharing our energy along those lines. So it stands to
Yeah,
reason that our energy is going to
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah, yeah.
captured.
Perfect. Our fields are all overlapping. Our auric fields are overlapping. I mean, anyone who doesn't believe in auras, I mean, my dad was working in a nuclear power plant with those engineer kind of guys, the guys who are like, invent light bulb. Those types, probably not as smart. But they did the experiment where you break the hanger in two, and you make two L-shaped pieces on the hanger, and you make sure that it can swivel for, kind of in this shape.
Oh, right. Yeah, the dowsing rods.
Yeah, yeah, and they demonstrated a thing where uh, the one person would stand there and the other person would walk toward them, and
Mhm.
the rods would, and
Yeah.
they kept doing it, right? Oh, just this one guy, it's not a trick.
Mhm.
And this on in the same meeting, the dowser found the water pipes below the meeting room. This is going on in a nuclear power plant. And he's like, there's a pipe there and a pipe there. And they went and pulled the blueprints. And sure enough. So, yes, that is a brilliant observation. All the electrical fields overlap each other
Mhm. Mhm.
and they make patterns. So, of course, when electricity comes along, it's going to follow that pattern. Ah,
Mhm. And for anybody who is skeptical, our audience or my audience, it tends to be open-minded, but you can go to the Heart Math Institute and they have all the science on magnetic fields and electric fields and how that emanates out of our body.
right. Okay, so we're becoming tribalized. Unraveling uh we're unraveling individuality. This is dangerous territory to be going into. And then the light bulb comes along. That's the next thing, and it essentially turns night to day. Now, we can't conceive of not having bright lights at night. Can't
Well,
conceive of it.
you
Unless you
can
go out in the, yeah, you can. You go
yeah.
camping. Sorry, I
Yeah, yeah, no.
forgot.
If you follow our blog, we'll we've been well. Dan, my wife used to hate me because I used to turn all the lights off after sunset, but we still,
What good
but
are
hey,
they?
we still do have amber red kind of lights. So yeah, it's true. It's true. Imagine everything was dark. Yeah, it would. Your eyes would adjust, but some things wouldn't adjust. Yeah, you're right.
So people were up by burning the midnight oil, which made whale oil. Some poor whale got killed, so you could sit
Yeah.
at your desk, at your writing desk, and write with your quill pen at night. This was before the electricity. Then there were gasoliers. The term gaslighting. Most people, if you ever use the term gaslighting, I have an assignment for you. Watch the movie Gaslight. If you go around saying gaslighting, he's gaslighting me, gaslighting, watch the fucking movie.
Mhm.
There were things called gasliers. You know what these are? Gasliers?
No, and I've actually never used the term gaslight ever yet
Well,
because
I don't have to smack you then.
yeah, 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 no, because I'm I know I don't know exactly what it means, and or I like to use words that I know exactly their origin. So please, yeah.
It's pretty simple. The gasliers were, some of them looked like chandeliers. Some of them were on the wall. Again, this kind of a thing where they would swing out into the room, and they would run natural gas through them, and there was a gas lamp on the end, like a basically gas-powered candle, emitting benzene into the room, filling the room with benzene. P.S. And uh, so I actually have one. I found one because when they ripped we kind of live in the capital of renovations around here. I'm sitting in a building built in like 1904. So there's always renovation going on, and I'm a renovation groupie. I have like some fetishes, and that's one of them. And they threw out gasolier, but I didn't know what it was. My accountant knew what it was. He said, "Oh, he's an antique guy. Oh, that's a gasolier." So in the film Gaslight, what's going on is, and this is all apropos of right before electricity turns night to day, but on the theme of gaslight, um, of course, if someone lights the gasoliers on another floor, the pressure is going to drop on your floor, or lights them and or turns open the valve and lights the gasoliers in another room. So this woman, she married someone, and her husband would pretend to go out to take a walk at night. But what he was really doing was going up kind of a side stairway and entering the attic through a secret entrance and lighting the gasliers on the attic level, making the gas lights dim on her floor. And also, there was the sound of walking around above her. But her husband would then come back and try to make it seem like he had just been out for an innocent walk, walking around, strolling around town, when in fact he had been upstairs rummaging through the attic looking for her money.
Hmm.
Now, I won't tell you how the film ends, but
Hmm.
that's gaslighting. He was always up there, creaking the floor, lighting up the gas lights, and lying to her.
Hmm.
So that's what that term means, and it is on the list of the most overused words that need to be banned from the language, as does the phrase "according to science"
Never
and
used either.
experts say. So if come around here and try to type the word experts say into an article, I will smack you upside the head. All right, so or the copy editor will cut it. So then comes electricity. So go from oil lamps to gasoliers and then boom, Times Square.
Hmm.
Times Square. I did find a picture of Lower Manhattan before electricity. I've got it somewhere in my collection. I try to publish this stuff so I don't lose it. And now suddenly, can you imagine the difference? You grow up and the city's dark, and then you're 35 and suddenly, boom, there's street lights and billboards all over the place.
And
Crazy.
yeah, yeah, it was like a different world. It was just totally, yeah, disembodying probably. Right? Your mind can't handle, you're overwhelmed. Our senses aren't able to handle that kind of frequency because it is, of course, well, number one, it runs off artificial electrical and artificial magnetic currents that aren't native to Earth. Earth has the Schumann resonance and the alpha wave frequency and things that our brains, uh, you know, think in rhythm with at 8 pulses per second. But now you're taking something to 60 pulses per second and marrying it to something that is a total artificial light, right? And so now it's both. It's the light and the electricity. So yeah, it's hard to imagine what those people went through, but maybe we need to imagine it, or not even just imagine it, experience it by turning off our electricity at night or power. I know people, some of our subscribers, I talked to over the phone, they said, yeah, my best sleeps are when we have a blackout,
Yeah,
right?
I was
Just
about
like,
to say the word blackout. So have you ever
yeah,
been through like a real black? You must have been through a couple, right? You're in Niagara Falls area, right? So there were a
yeah.
couple that affected large chunks of the East Coast, including we're on the same power grid, basically, powered by Tesla's thing at Niagara Falls.
Hurricane Sandy, actually, because I lived in New Jersey for a while. That was, everybody's like, Roman, come on, you can't stay in your apartment. Stay with your family where it's nice and warm. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm staying here all week. I got a big growler of beer, and now back in those days, it was like 15 years ago. I did have an iPad. So I had some kind of data BS. Actually, no, I think I had stuff downloaded already on my iPad. So that I did have that, but I wasn't going for, I wanted the quiet, and it was great, just having that dark. It was cold. I was huddled up, and it felt amazing, right? And I think sometimes we're so afraid of these things, like we think nature is brutal. We've been conditioned to think by some of these thinkers of the Renaissance that that nature is terrible, but it really is a beautiful thing when we tap into it. So anyway, but go ahead with Times Square.
Well, but night has been turned to day, so this is since eternity. The most light you had at night was a fire. And I mean, have you ever gone out into the woods and made a fire and thought, it's kind of cool that I can do this, right? And even though you're not using any chemicals, maybe you a Bic lighter or matches, okay, fine. You probably weren't doing this kind of fire. I can't do that.
You
But even still, go down into a cave, collect wood, light the thing on fire. Damn, it's cool. That was a big deal. A big deal to be able to control that. Well, that was the most light you had at night.
Mhm.
The full moon, okay. Um, Lightning for a split second, and now suddenly it's light at night, mainly in the cities. And we're talking now like around I would say 1900.
Mhm.
The electricity is getting out to the rural areas by 1910. Um, and now we're going into the early era of the telephone simultaneously. The phones are getting out to the rural areas in the same era, very early 20th century. And now we're on the heels of World War One. And while this is happening, the feminist leaders in England are waging a terrorist campaign, allegedly to get the vote. Now, by terrorist campaign, this is one of the most disturbing books I ever read. I read it about 3 weeks ago, called The Suffragette Bombers. And when I say terrorist, I mean serious arson bombs, chemical arson bombs, powder bombs weighing 12 pounds with nails in them. I mean lighting a crowded theater on fire, not saying fire in a crowded theater, lighting lighting the crowded theater on fire, throwing a hatchet at, I think, the Prime Minister of Ireland and lopping off part of his ear, burning up mail cars, train cars, houses, cathedrals, mansions, and sports facilities. This is exactly coincidental with electricity and the telephone. Easily 100. The only flaw in the book that I read, called The Suffragette Bombers, is it doesn't give a blow-by-blow chronology. It wouldn't be that hard to just to read the book and make a chronology. It would take like the weekend, basically. And it would be harrowing. It was unbelievable to read the book. I was groaning. I mean, how often do you read a book and put it down and hold your head in your hands? And this is this extremely aggressive, violent campaign, and rich women were writing big checks to fund this. The extent of the rage, the disembodied rage, was absolutely beyond the beyond. And the most of these women were mercenaries. They were paid to do this, and a lot of them stayed involved because the money was so good. And they're claiming that women are morally superior. This was the argument, that if women get the vote, all of society's problems will be solved. And they're trying to make the point by blowing up railroad stations. We're supposed to believe this. And you may think, you're just on one of your anti-feminist rants. Well, no. Check this book out. It's extremely well documented. A few people know about it, but the important thing is when this was happening and leading into World War I. And the only thing that stops the bombing campaign is World War I, where the suffragettes in England suddenly get behind the prime minister they had previously said was the devil. Now they join the patriarchy, and they're sending the young men off to war with the White Feather Campaign, guilting young boys, 15, 16, 17 years old, into going to basically lose their lives and get shot full of holes in Gallipoli, blown up and die in trenches in mustard gas. And this is basically the war of telephone, telegraph, and telephone and electricity is World War I.
Wow.
And read any description of World War I. It is absolutely harrowing. Now, what's going on at this point? Well, the radio's coming in at this point, and Marconi is stealing Tesla's patents and claiming credit. He's since lost credit. Marconi did not invent the radio because Tesla invented every component that he used in the radio, and finally that was straightened out. But the Marconi wireless, on the Titanic, right, in the Marconi wireless room, you can look it up and see the proud guy posing in the, and they were telegraphing for the most part. But still, radio is an evolving technology at the time of World War I. And then after World War I in the 1920s, boom, they're starting to license radio stations. Massive Eris activity in Aries, very similar to 2016 when Trump was taking over the world by Twitter. And suddenly McLuhan says all of the individuation is unraveled overnight by radio, and we become a tribal culture. The global village is what he called it.
Mhm.
That's where the term comes from, radio.
Mhm.
And he said,
Uh,
nobody likes, go ahead, yeah, one last thing. He said, nobody likes to say this, but Gandhi, Roosevelt, and Hitler all came from the radio. It's content neutral.
wow.
They were all tribal leaders going on
Wow.
tribalism. Yeah.
Wow. And and that's something that I really want to ask you about, just in a little bit later in our discussion about the repression of those energies and how they come out through electricity, because I think there's something deeper with the
Ah,
sexual force. But
yeah.
just before we get into that, I wanted to just also mention that radio coincided with the breakout of influenza, and or some people say the Spanish flu. But if, even the scientists and doctors back in the 1700s named influenza, gave influenza its name because it comes from the influence of the stars, and stars are electromagnetic energies. So we have a new electromagnetic force coming out worldwide, and now you have people being stricken down, boats launching off at sea for 3 weeks. Everybody's fine, and all of a sudden everybody gets sick out of nowhere, right? You had people getting sick faster than trains could travel and spread contagion. And that's all noted in The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, if anybody wants to track the history of all that. But um, so yeah, the radio brought the global village and brought mass consciousness, but it also de-individuated our health and also isolated us a lot, when it comes to, well, the way we think or connect. And yeah, so anyway, go on, maybe, and maybe tell, if you can talk about the sexual nature and how it's being repressed. um, of course, we had William Reich, who wrote that book Orgasm that you
Function of
wrote.
the orgasm.
And he
Yep.
talked about how the function of the orgasm explains how authoritarian governments take over. And that's incredible. And it does make a lot of sense if you really think about it. It sounds out there, but it makes a lot of sense,
Hmm.
because we give up our power especially when we don't even know or suppress that power. So yeah, maybe.
Can we bookmark a topic, which is the Spanish flu, whether it even happened, were the stories exaggerated, and what actually caused the illnesses? So the Baileys, Mark and Sam
Mm,
Bailey, recently, within the past maybe 6 months, did a video that completely sidesteps Furstenberg's theory.
mm,
And I'm not saying that it's wrong per se, or that there was not a susceptibility created by
mm.
the. I believe he says this is about radar, right? That they were first using, was it radar or radio, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah, he said radio and then radar after that. But yeah, I'll yeah, let's bookmark it. I'm open minded to
So check
learn
it
more.
out. So they're
Yeah.
saying that it was a combination of basically phony vaccinations
Mm,
that was supposed to prevent this thing. And
mm,
then, furthermore, chemicals that the soldiers were taking home on the ships in their suitcases, and their previous exposures, and the absolute, complete, devastating grief of so many people having been murdered so painfully.
mm.
So they're very thorough about how they do these things, and it's, I think, to me, they're a viewpoint I never want to be without. And I know I can play games trying to refute them. Then I can write to Mark, and I always get answers. So if you ever want to have an argument with the Baileys and want me to translate it into extremely polite, a single one-line question, I'm your guide.
All right, thank you.
So to all watching. So but they did a fine job on this, and I think that it is highly probable that Furstenberg has a valid theory that with every shift there's a every advance of technology, the aura is once again shifted and weakened, and then we have to harmonize with it.
Hmm.
So the progress of what's happening, though, is that people are becoming less and less individual, and more tribal. And then by the time we get into the 1930s, the tribalism is absolutely, completely insane. And then, you know, Hitler announces all these people he wants to murder, and then there's a Holocaust that goes on from 33 to 45, and then a massive world war that's going on from when are the Brits dragged in? What, 38? I think it's 38 to 45. But what's happening is people are losing their individuality, but it's not complete yet. They're still literate. This is the thing. People are still literate, or many people are still literate. So it took a while, and McLuhan is not a scientist, right? So he's not trying to prove what he's saying. He's trying to observe. But he states explicitly that the individuality of typographic man unravels overnight with the radio, and we go right into tribal World War II. And then we're getting into television in the late 40s, which has a whole other bunch of effects, and which are quite contrary at the time. I don't know exactly what year you were born, but we were all told the TV was going to make us all apathetic. And what McLuhan documents is that far from making people apathetic, is that the low resolution TV, what he called the iconic TV image, right? Unlike we're in super high fucking resolution. I'm talking into a 4K camera. It's hilarious. I mean, even whatever that provoked people into action, and hence we got the protests. We got the civil rights movement and the protests in the 1960s. Some of it aided by content. As McLuhan said, you cannot have a hot war in a cool medium, meaning you can't put a hot war on TV. Because when I was growing up, I'm born in '64, so I'm born just as the Vietnam War is peaking, and by the time I'm 5, it's 1969. 1970, my dad's doing his PhD in mass communications, and we're watching the news every night in total silence with a microphone taped to the side of the TV set with masking tape because he was taping the news. So I'm watching night after night after night after night, basically through my entire childhood, of the hot war and the cold medium.
Wow.
And yeah.
No, I was just going to say, what you said about Hitler and Gandhi, it's almost like what people didn't have a bad guy or anything to focus on before other than the weather, the crops, their family. What did people have to focus on, right? So this created a whole new thing for people to focus
that's
on.
a very interesting observation. Well, the devil, but that's kind of phantomish.
Yeah, that's kind of like, house by house, right? What your religion was, what your belief. That was also an individual struggle, right? Yeah, but yeah, or your church every Sunday. every Sunday they had the rock and roll show at the church or the temple with the stained glass. That was your medium. But after that,
yeah,
right, what did you have, right?
Yeah, he went back out catching butterflies and hornback toads, whatever Elton John said.
Yeah.
Going back to my plow.
Mm-hmm.
And so then there was the image print was used to perpetuate the image of Hitler, the image of evil, and they basically invent Satan out of Hitler. I mean, forget about all the U.S. companies that were funding the Third Reich, owning it. There's a theory that the Bush family owned Auschwitz as a slave labor camp. I mean, there's a film worth watching. It's a 3.5-hour documentary that I thought I was never going to watch through. I watched it with my then girlfriend. We had to stop at it was 3.5 hours. We had to stop at 3 hours to eat and then turn on and watch the last half hour. It's that good. Everything is a rich man's trick. Everything, it's free on YouTube.
I think I've seen that before. That was a while back, but yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
Well, it documents the Bushes owning Auschwitz. Now, I have not gone through the bibliography, and this would be wonderful to have fact checking. If Chiron Return had $1 million, I would have an office building full of fact checkers, or a nice terrace with an atrium. full of fact checkers
Real
with
human beings.
non UV glass. Um,
That's right.
and a diagram of the Kennedy assassination with 10 sniper nests.
Yeah.
10. And they almost all missed. Okay, so uh, the TV era also had a thing that we're still dealing with, which is that people got the idea they could construct their lives like a TV director. So the ground field level of TV is it's the electric box and all that stuff, but it's also all the stuff you don't see, which is the director and the script writer and the script doctors and the makeup person and the editing, patching together all the scenes and memorizing things and the phony live audience and all this stuff. Well, people then got the idea, and they have not let go of it, that their life was a thing that they could essentially stage manage rather than living organically or living in a kind of a sequence, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I'd rather think of my life as a book than as a TV show or
Mhm.
radio broadcast, but people got the idea that they could essentially stage manage their lives. And this is what dominates in the TV area, the provocation to action and the domination. Now, here's where we get into the visual field, because the remember the early TV sets were they were so shitty nobody could even look at it now except in an art exhibit, right? And I even know where to get one. There's this antique emporium right in my town, to just set up a like a 1965 black and white TV set with I don't know what I'd feed into it. Um, but the it really screwed with your eyes. Now, what
Mhm.
we're doing screws with us too, but
Mhm.
this was very slow scan rate. Those horizontal scans. What do you know about those? What do you know about the visual power of the cathode ray tube? By the way, being shot in your face,
Mhm.
a ray lighting up the back of a screen, but it's rear screen projection.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that particular model, but I do know that that flicker that we have now in our monitors, we just can't perceive it because it's so fast. Our brains, our nervous system, it senses it all. We just most of
Yeah,
us don't perceive it. It's operating at about 100 times per second. Some of this flicker,
100
especially.
times per second.
Mhm, yeah, and it depends on the monitor, but a lot of people will have seizures. They will have epileptic seizures. 3% of people will have seizures or prone to have photosensitive seizures. So if they have any kind of flicker, so a lot of the new, you see a lot of these safety lights that people ride with bicycles. They're constantly flickering, or even school buses have those LED lights that are strobing all the time. It's called the
Some red
strobe.
lights have a strobe built in to
Yeah,
get your attention.
exactly.
I guess after somebody gets killed drunk driving at that corner.
Yeah, yeah. So it's all, our brains are always picking up on that, and that's why I use an app on my computer monitor to reduce all of that. But there's flicker-free monitors you can get now. Definitely the smart TVs have a lot more of that. The
Flicker free, I mean they're addressing it, or they have more flicker.
Yeah, the smart TVs have more flicker, but there's just flicker-free monitors you can get, right? That are a couple $100, not even that costly. And then at least that covers that part of it. But for instance, any iPhone also that has that red light feature where you turn it into night light, what it does is it's just switching on and off the light so fast, the screen, to make it to dim it. It's like a dimmer switch. But it's a digital dimmer switch, so it's just flicking on and off the brightness so fast to make it look dim. But that flicker in the background is causing eye strain.
Well,
So
pink, it makes it look pink.
yeah, it makes it look pink. Yeah.
I mean, I very much prefer that to look at than the
Hmm.
cool icy,
Hmm.
cool icy look
Hmm.
of the monitor. I leave mine on night vision all the time. It goes off at 5 to 10 and goes on at 10. I mainly because I can't stand looking at the blue light.
Hmm. No, and that's still better. That's still better. I guess my point is that when you have that, even with the red light reduction, that will increase the flicker rate. So,
Right.
the, of course, it's still a step in the right direction. But my point is that these monitors now, whereas before with that cathode ray tube, you could tell, and you were visually disturbed by it, just like you're disturbed by the refrigerator going off or the lawnmower going. But the Wi-Fi you can't hear, and
Yeah.
the new flicker you can't see. And that goes into what you're saying in your art, that wonderful article about the invisible environments you wrote in 2019, talking about how we're living in this fish tank, and how how a lot of our environments are imperceptible, right? That we don't really see the
Oh, is
stuff
that
around
on
us.
Medium? Did you
Mm.
find that on Medium?
Yeah,
Okay, would you send me that link, please? When we can't
yeah,
even get into those Medium accounts anymore. Whatever. I don't like Medium very much, but it was fun in its day. It was the pre-Substack of its day. It was,
mm.
and Substack's 100 times better. All right, so now we're only up to television. Now, look at the way each one of these electrical advances has sent everything spinning into total insanity. And the 60s felt as insane as our times do. The total overwhelm of everything all at once. Only we're dealing with 100 times more than they dealt with in the 60s. Easily 100 times more.
Mm.
Where a story could have 3 weeks of life or a year of life in the news, and now it's like done by that night. And
Mhm.
hear about it
Sure.
again. And bad shit. I mean, the U.S. Trump cut off all federal grants today, including food stamps. So there's all these people who are living on their SNAP cards. Funding freeze sets off New York Times new fight over Trump's vision for his government. But the worst of these is cutting off SNAP, this food stamp program that people get this basically allocation on a credit card, and they can like buy things at the farmer's market or the grocery store. Um, Now, to answer Kat Berlin's question, this is what digital insanity feels like. It is Trump hosing us down with 200 executive orders in one day, basically, making everyone fight. What it feels like is complete insanity, but it's also aggressive. This is the thing that one of McLuhan's theories, and it's you have to. I've had to think these things through sometimes like 50 times to actually be able to state it back.
Mhm.
That disembodiment, one of the symptoms of disembodiment is the sense of not knowing who you are.
Mhm.
And astrologically, it's always acting on Aries. It's almost a joke how much. And the my book, The Awakening, which I just came out with in December, tracks this for everyone. But it drives you out of your sense of who you are. And then he said people respond to this, people and countries, with aggression as a kind of a cheap sugar high substitute for self-actualization, for growth. And so they just attack somebody and see. And this is why the internet immediately, what a lot of people figured out immediately, even in the internet of the 90s, was people were snipey. They were doing things in digital space that they would never do in physical space.
Mhm.
Perfectly vicious, heartless treatment of other people
Mhm.
because they were absolutely completely disembodied in digital space. And at least if you're in the grocery store, you don't just ram your shopping cart into some other cart with a kid and then like punch the kid and go pick up your frozen peas.
Right.
You're going to be, oh, I'm in a body. I'm going to go around that person. I'm going to bump into them and say, excuse me. In digital space, no body, no sense of that courtesy, which is a factor of the physical world and people. And then add that to tribalism, and we get things like the Me Too movement, which was this absolutely vicious tribal movement that somehow not only vicious but ungrounded in any reality, that people thought, oh, okay, yeah, this seems to make sense because they were completely stoned out of their tree. on digital. Now, on the disembodiment theme, and this too is for Kat. Hi, Kat. McLuhan says somewhere, I wonder what book it's in. I've got to ask Andrew. That 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 the computer is LSD for the business community. This is one of my favorite McLuhan quotes. Now, he was a consultant for IBM, and I would bet any amount of money that McLuhan never dropped acid. But I would bet twice as much that he was at least at 10 different parties where everyone else dropped acid. And you can see McLuhan in his cool, humorous way, rather enjoying being around a bunch of, high society adults who are all tripping balls, stoned out of their tree, observing them in this state of mind, and noting things. And he puts the two together, and he says that that the computer is LSD. He uses the word LSD for the business community. Holy shit! Well, now we're all completely soaked. This is the biggest acid party in history, where there's not a minute where we're not exposed to computers.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, well, it's funny because LSD and LED are only one
Ah,
word apart, right? Or one letter apart.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
you could probably rearrange the E and make an S out of the parts.
Probably,
That's very
probably.
funny.
Yeah. Well, I love that quote that you had in that article. It says, if you don't know who you are, violence is the easiest way out if you're not into art and sex.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's a great way to be and a great way to think, because you're like, well, yeah, why am I not into art? Or why am I not into sex? Right. Like, or do I want to be violent? Right. And it makes so much sense if really, when you really boil it down that way, because, we have the energy inside of us to create, to procreate, to recreate. But what is
And
the
to connect,
electricity?
the drive to connect.
Exactly. What is that electricity doing? How is it hijacking us?
Hmm.
Um, on a mental and so why do you think the those elites, or not even elites, but those tech giants, or whatever you want to call them, those circles, they were into LSD? Was it because they wanted to escape?
No, everyone was dropping as an experiment.
Oh, okay.
Kennedy, everyone. I'm talking about on the poshest level of society. This is
Mm,
like, we're talking very early 60s. The stuff I think is invented in 47.
hmm
The way to remember that is the line, it was 20 years ago today, Sergeant Pepper taught the band to play. That came out in 67. That's a reference to the invention of Hoffman inventing acid. So Sandoz is making it, and people are doing good. They're doing good stuff. They're doing either Sandoz or Owsley. Sandoz first, and then Owsley starts to make it. The Grateful Dead sound man. Um, Now, here's an interesting thing, and I have to talk around the point because we want this. I want this video to go up on Google, so I'm going to have to insinuate things that I'm not going to say, and you're all going to know what I'm talking about. But let's talk about that thing that happened in 2020, right? And how it was that thing that happened in 2020 was based on not a biological reality, but a thing invented in a computer called MN 908-947, which was said to be a word that begins with a V. We'll see how smart Google's bots are. I don't think they're that smart. And the way that spread like such wildfire was not just because digital technology was used, that the word spread by Twitter, that the codes for the PCR were sent out by email, that the primers were printed in essentially 3D printers. All this is going on by computer, and MN 908-947 is an artificial intelligence construct, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could say, it's the fault of that stuff. No, the reason it worked is because we were all high as a tree on the LSD known as digital at that time.
Wow.
Right? So here's the comparison. Let's say you've got two adjoining rooms. In one room, you've got a bunch of people who've dropped. You've got like 30 or 40 people in there peaking. real high. And in the next room, there's like a school board meeting going on. Everyone's sitting around in their tie and they know what to do. And the school board lawyer is there and the school board secretary is there. And Jake Perry, it's happening in Burnsville, New Jersey. And my old friend Jake Perry is sitting there with his notebook in his lap. He still doesn't use a recorder. He still takes notes. And um, somebody walks in to the acid party and says, "There's an evil demon and you're all going to die." They can have a
Yeah.
pretty bad trip. And then the same person goes into the school board room and says, "There's an evil demon and you're all going to die." And and somebody in the back of the room, not even a cop, just walks the person out of the room and closes the door. But in the room where everyone's tripping, there's a panic attack going on. They're completely lost at evil demon. They start to see the evil demon.
Yeah, they hire the wrong police. They get the wrong doctors that
Yeah,
shouldn't be
they hire their own
doctors.
police, they get their own doctors, they want more medicine to cure them of this. So think about those two rooms. We were in the, well, I happen to be not. I mean, I would be the guy at the acid party who would say, "Okay, friends, we're all high on acid.
Mhm.
Parent, keep that in mind.
Mhm.
I'm high too, but I know that I'm high.
Mhm.
Can you recite your zip code?" You know, Ram Dass said you should never get so high on acid that you don't know your zip code. That may be my famous Ram
That's
Dass quote.
great.
And
That's
you know what
good.
he means. Don't become so disembodied that you cannot. Your neighborhood, right? The zip code is a big
Mhm.
thing. And so I think that we were so high we didn't know our zip code.
Mhm. High
And
on
hence,
fear. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
total, complete, not only fear, but attacking people for not behaving in exactly the right way. People, how can someone come up to me and call me a murderer? Look, I
Mhm.
admit I have the potential to kill somebody if I have to, if I'm threatened. Probably not to be like a sniper just shooting someone random, but if
Yeah.
someone tries to kill me, it'll be a fight to the finish, as would be with you. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But to call me a murderer, like Charles Manson or Jeffrey Dahmer, that's completely outrageous. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
not what I am, but I was called that.
Mm.
That's the extent of the not knowing the zip code. That's the extent
Mm.
of the people believing there was an evil demon, whereas right next door in the school board, they just go on with the next motion.
So yeah, so you see the LSD in a way is is creating that image in their mind, that the hallucination, which could be whatever they're seeing on a screen, and then the irradiation aspect, the magnetic field or electric field or radio frequency coming out of it, that's maybe the euphoria that they're feeling off of that LSD
Ah,
or whatever that
getting
wherever that
high on the
emotion.
threat.
Yeah, getting high on it, right? Because that
Sure.
it's irradiating your pineal gland, your thyroid, it's speeding up your metabolism. There's even a thing called screen apnea where you actually it increases your breathing, it acidifies your blood, it puts you in a shallow sympathetic nervous state. So
Shallow sympathetic nervous state. Right. And
right.
it's hard to get away from the screen.
Mhm.
I mean, I have nice big screens. I sit as far back as I can. I sit at least, I'm sitting about maybe 2.5 feet from my screen, so I don't want to ever be on top of it. But still, they're very, very, very compelling.
Mhm.
And I find it disturbing how I have to fight with myself to sit there with another electrical instrument, my guitar, which is a totally analog instrument.
Mhm.
And it's like this push and pull back and forth.
Mhm.
These things are a little easier, but because the guitar requires all this physical dexterity,
Mhm.
and I'm not as good, it's not as fulfilling right away, and all this stuff. That's where I feel it the most is the fight between
Mhm.
the iMac, the iMac and the Stratocaster.
Mhm.
So here we are, high as a tree, i.e., the neutron bomb went off. We were all killed instantly. We don't remember it, and we're floating around in a replica of the physical world. That is digital. And it has all these weird properties to it. All these weird properties. And we were talking cannabis the other day. We had that great scientific discussion of cannabis. Cannabis puts you in a state of mind where it seems so real.
Mhm.
It all seems so vivid. And the cannabis now is, I think there's 5 cannabis shops just in my county. I
Hmm.
could visit them all. Like I could drive, if you live out in Shandaken, you got to drive half an hour
Hmm.
to score an ounce of really powerful weed. But for most of the population, you could just walk or take a 10-minute drive. And people are walking around on their vapes all day.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think that it is cementing in the digital. It is deepening this. Well, it's adding a physical drug to the psychic drug.
Mhm. Oh, for sure. And I remember too being addicted. Well, I mean, I would
What
be
drug do you mind saying? I'm always curious people's drug of choice because I'm a homeopath.
well, I used to like I used to smoke weed. I mean, I used to smoke. I mean, I still do occasionally, maybe like every couple months, right? It's not anything that, and I use it as a tool to relax. But I used to, yeah, I used to smoke it every day. This is,
But it
maybe
was weed. It
10
wasn't like
years ago.
cocaine or
No, no,
downers or.
no,
Okay,
no.
so weed is one thing. I mean, that's very homeopathically very well mapped out.
Hmm.
Which I'll do. We're probably going to contribute both to this piece, but overstimulation without risk. So the digital environment is very much a cannabis environment also because it's
Hmm.
overstimulation without risk. Isn't that perfect?
Ah,
Rajan Sankaran, that's one of his rubrics for cannabis indica,
okay.
homeopathic literature. Overstimulation with very California. People like to wear bright colors. They like to spend someone else's money.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
I'm a phony hippie. I like to wear bright colors, but that's kind of, and I'm long hair, but I like to spend my own money, frankly.
Hmm.
I'd much rather spend my money than somebody else's money.
Same.
But overstimulation with, and that, in the early internet, when the thing would come up on the screen that said surf safely,
Hmm.
remember that?
Yeah,
Surf
yeah, I kind
safely?
of, yeah, I kind of remember that. Yeah.
Well, you know what that meant, right?
Well, just watch out for nasty websites. I don't know.
Pussy.
Oh,
Watch
I
out
see.
for pussy. Surf
Uh,
safely. That's what it meant. Beware of pussy.
mm, mm,
Don't watch out. There could be sex. Surf safely. What other
oh, I
influence are you
see.
get on Silk Road?
Right,
What?
right, right, right. I
How do you
see.
get to Silk Road? Nobody even knows how
Mm.
to get there, except like whatever, a couple of whatever programmers.
So now where are we now? Because we're with Trump, right? And now everybody's going crazy. Um, and everybody loves them. Well, a lot of people don't love him, but there's this huge blind spot. Now we have AI coming in, and
Coming in, it's taken over.
yeah,
No,
and
it's
some
completely taken over.
and people still think Trump is playing some kind of chess, 5D chess, whatever the hell
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
means.
And they
So
think
what?
that AI is a tool, as a device of some kind that's going to like make them help them write term papers. When in reality, the reason you need the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant, you know about this, right? That Gates leased 3 Mile Island for 20 years to reactivate reactor number 2
No, I didn't know that.
to power an AI farm in Pennsylvania. I think let me
Sick.
fact check on the which reactor. 3 Mile Island.
See, because
I never remember which one. Unit 2 malfunction. So he was reactivating Unit 1. Okay, a nuclear fucking power plant to power AI. What do we need that for? Now, the lure for people is, I think the lure is to be relieved of the burden of thought, thinking, the work
mm,
of thinking. Most people don't like it very much.
no, it hurts.
Yeah, well,
It's
not if
working
you're
out.
me.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're
yeah.
me, it's a lot of fun. Come over and think. I happen to love thinking,
Mm.
but I'm creative and I have fun. But for most people, it hurts. They don't want to. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to pick through all their misperceptions, all the shit they believed.
Well, it hurts, but it's like a workout, right? It builds muscle and it feels good after a while. You want to do it.
Yeah.
You want to keep doing it. But yeah.
So that's part of what it is, and it is full disembodiment. It's taking thought outside the body. I mean, the iPhone's bad enough, right? That that everyone's got their brain in their hand. I've covered up. I think this is Virginia Woolf. I don't
Mm.
know. Is it who is this? Someone tell me. See, I
You
used to be a
disembody
radical
your.
feminist. I swear to God, I was a radical feminist. Hello. Ah, I'm full. Ah.
Oh, you put a mask on. Oh, all right. Yeah.
Okay. But this is your brain outside your head. Look,
Mm,
you've got all your pictures. You have all your memories right there. You need to dial in numbers to get in. Now you're
hmm
in. Ooh, that's my friend Elijah. Ooh, and now I've got my memories. Look, that's a
hmm
microphone I just bought. I didn't like it very much. I got it for half price
hmm
from China. Look, my memories.
hmm
Isn't that exciting? And I can scroll like all the way back to like 2010. And people, if you didn't have this, most people would be completely fucking lost.
It's true.
Completely lost. All their payment information and their bank accounts and all that.
hmm
I can't believe anybody wants to have that kind of vulnerability.
Well, and it goes back to with they're lost at their core psychologically and they're lost sexually, right? Because what
Oh, we
was
didn't go there. I didn't mean to dodge
yeah.
you on that one.
No, no, that's okay. Yeah, and because we want to get down to the root of it, and I think you do a great job of pointing to that, how people are not tapping into their themselves, so they want to be protected by tyrants like well, let's just pick on Trump, right? Like
Yep.
Trump, or and don't get me wrong, like
You like
I've
Trump as much as anybody.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, no, I back in 2016, back in 2016 when he was going with Hillary, I'm like, all right, I got to vote for this guy.
I was
Now,
kidding. I got it right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but no, yeah, yeah. But now it's so crazy. After everything that he did in 2020, it's like, come on, like
Yeah.
really. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
a whole nother thing. So
Yes.
yeah,
Well,
so people they have this survival instinct, so they go within, or they have a hard time going within, so they're looking for protection from the outside, and that's because your theory is as children their sexuality may have been repressed or they didn't have the proper sex ed like we're maybe having now, and so maybe go into that and how that's playing out with technology.
so this comes from Wilhelm Reich initially, and the book is The Mass Psychology of Fascism, which I think was written before the function of the orgasm. I'm not sure but basically what he says in The Mass Psychology of Fascism is that children are their children's consciousness is very different from adult consciousness. And children are very energetic and curious and precocious, and they want to interact with their environment in a way that's exciting to them. And this drives the adults crazy because they're not spontaneous anymore. They don't want to chase butterflies anymore. So what the adults do, and remember he's writing in the 20s and 30s, he says that not specifically to attack sex, though religion likes to do that, but to make it more convenient to be parents. They start to cauterize the children's natural spontaneity, which includes their sexuality, and basically turns them into these numbed out, basically numbs them out as adults. But it links desire with anxiety. This is, and remember, Reich split off from Freud, and so Reich developed the sexual theory that Freud starts. And what he says is, and I'm having trouble finding this quote, and maybe some of my old readers know where to find it, because I'm sure I've quoted it before. I guess I should just look through the Planet Waves archive and Google Wilhelm Reich. That would be a good way. But he says that it grafts anxiety to desire. And this is the magic formula that just basically kills people. Because whenever they experience desire, then they experience anxiety.
Hmm.
And so their entire pleasure response and orgasmic response is grafted to anxiety. And then this is obviously very unpleasant, unless you fetishize it, which seems to
Hmm.
have happened quite a bit. And then people are cut off, and he says what develops is a craving for mysticism. the mystic longing, he called it. The mystic longing, where you crave some, you're in this kind of hypnotic state, craving some cosmic fulfillment, which really would be perfectly fine coming from your emotions and your body and your boyfriend or your girlfriend. But instead, it becomes disembodied, and then it is answered in the charismatic leader, otherwise known as a tyrant. And look, Hitler was very charming. He was very charismatic. Mussolini, very charismatic. Right? Roosevelt, was Roosevelt a tyrant? Well, we seem to still like him in a way, but we've been lied to about what he did. He couldn't get us out of the Depression. All they could do is get us into World War II. They couldn't get us out of the Depression without World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And the atomic bomb program was Roosevelt's program, not Truman.
Mm-hmm.
Truman pushes the button, but it was Roosevelt. So whatever you think of Roosevelt, the sexual repression is answered. The mystic longing is answered in the charismatic leader. Never was this more obvious than Trump, I think. And I had pictures in one old article of you could smell the cortisol coming off of people's bodies, that it was so reeky. The photo would reek of cortisol. It was like a complete turnoff.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if you upload that to Pornhub, it'll just shut the whole website down. I should try that. So here we are, and we're basically being completely manipulated by someone who's talking about God and promising wealth. That was the inauguration speech. God this, God that, and God the other thing. We're going to make you real rich.
Mm-hmm. And what God, right? And that's people always say, "Oh, we're going to make America great again." What version of great? Whose version of great is it?
Some
right?
mythical.
What does greatness mean?
Mythical, and I think a kind of mystic longing for a mythical concept of aggrandizement. It's aggrandizement. I mean, Trump is very good at some things, like aggrandizement. He's the master of self-aggrandizement. Love him or hate him, you have to admit that. He's very good at making himself seem like a big deal.
And so what do you tell somebody to do? You know what I mean? Who says, okay, well, what can I do about it? I'm just a mother, or I'm just a college student, I can't change that. What am I going to do? Right.
Well, stay in touch with yourself. I've edited my article that's coming out tonight, the Book of Blue article, to say that working consciously with orgasm may be one of our greatest resources to stay incarnated, to stay in touch with the human realm. I think sexuality has a lot to do with it, but it has to be embodied. And we have a problem of projection overlay right now that's gotten really, really serious, where people can't tell one another apart. They can't tell me from you, essentially. And they get in these relationships that are so overwhelming that they pull back in the relationship, and there's not really contact going on. The friend that I quote who read one of the drafts, because probably 30 people have read this. And then as far as digital, I would say what we're doing now is the right way to use digital. To have as much fun as possible in digital. I would not want to be involved with the internet were I not having such a great time creating loving, friendly stuff for people to do to kind of break the spell of all this. Ew. I mean, isn't this what we're doing, the exact opposite of Twitter, just the constant rolling disaster? We've been on the phone now for an hour and 40 minutes. I have not stopped having fun the entire time. And I'm just going to take a wild guess. A couple of people watching have had fun. Yeah. So that's important to create in the environment. Right, McLuhan said there's no going back. Once you're in, you're in. Therefore, all you can really do is make art in the environment. I quote him in the chronology. I quote him. I'll read this quote. And he, as the years went on, he I think said this more frequently in my perception of his reading. I have not read every word he wrote, but I seem to see this idea start to appear. Maybe I just was gravitating to it, but he said to have a disease without its symptoms is to be immune.
Hmm.
Thought one. No society has ever known enough about its actions to have developed immunity to its new extensions or technologies. We didn't get into this aspect of digital. This is a good opportunity. No society has ever known enough about its actions to have developed immunity to its new extensions or technologies. By extensions, he means extensions of the nervous system. Then, today, we have begun to sense that art may be able to provide such immunity.
Uh, wow.
So
Well,
this is why I turn everything I do into art. I mean, have you noticed that everything is art? It's got
mhm.
music. It's got illustrations made by me or someone I care about or the best photography I can find. Music composed by me or my friends or artists I completely fucking love. So there's always love in the dream, even when I'm like writing about Jimmy Carter and the Trilateral Commission.
Mhm.
I make sure there's love in the dream, that it's a pleasing page to look at, that I'm appealing to the senses. I work in video, audio, photography, and writing. And if you come over, I'll make you dinner. I'll bring you
Yeah,
some
yeah,
tomato or applesauce.
yeah, for sure, for sure. No, no, yeah. Hey, I'm up for it. I
Wild, I've got
know.
your bottle of wild applesauce. I'm afraid to open it because I don't think I can eat it all quickly enough. But I'll just have to eat it all, basically.
Just keep it in the fridge, right?
Okay, it'll
It'll
keep.
last.
All right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Good,
There's so
good,
much
good.
there's lots of pectin in it,
And
so
it's
it'll.
acidic.
Yeah, yeah.
So therefore, stay in touch with your senses and make this a loving environment. Now, this is not easy. I would imagine a lot of people's digital dream does not leave them a lot of room to create in this environment because it's so overwhelming.
Mm. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's well, we've gotten to that nervous state where we're so sprung. It's kind of like a spring, right? That you've reached this. If you have 100 pounds of tension per square inch, how much do you need to relax to get back to your normal state? Well, you're
Yeah.
going to need 100 pounds more of relaxation, but it's still going to feel great when you get there. And that's kind of like you got to take that leap of faith kind of thing, right? I mean, it's like yesterday I didn't have coffee and I really wanted to have coffee in the morning, but I didn't. But I we're, both Bodana and I were able to then relax more the rest of the day, and it felt good to just relax. And I think it just people have we've that technology has accelerated so fast exponentially that it's hard to play it at its own game, that you need to just get off the ramp and play the slow game in a way, and then you will appreciate it. It's just yeah, it just you have to cut the cord somehow, and that's up to each and everyone to do it. And I think that's where the sexuality and the relationship with self comes in. But it's yeah, we've reached that point of super saturation that how do we become less overwhelmed? And that's why I love rituals. Like, first thing I do, I go outside, get outside, see the sunrise, or if you wake up late, just get outside first thing, don't look at your phone, or before bed, right? Whatever works for you. But that environment, again, bringing in that imperceptible environment into our senses is so important to make it work for us, because that light is so powerful. And if you can use it to our advantage, like our ancestors, I think that's the one thing we can take heart in, is to know that we have the same DNA of those same people that have been around, that have survived all those cataclysms and have been around before electricity, that we know how to do it. It's just we've been
Mhm.
programmed to believe
Yeah.
that we can't.
So, yes, yeah, we're walking around with all the information. Now, that includes the information about what orgasm is. Now, I'm about to drop a pretty major piece about sexuality and masturbation tonight. So, hopefully, that'll get a conversation going. You never know on the internet. And the thing is, I think that what is this thing called orgasm? Well, your ego goes away for a couple of seconds. And I'm wondering how people are doing. How is your orgasmic health in 2025
Mm.
as compared to 2015 or 2005? And I would ask people that. Now, there's not surveys of this that I know of. There's not, it's like the one thing that's not studied. They study everything else.
Hmm.
Every other damn thing is studied to fucking ad infinitum. But I think that there is a key to escaping the worst effects of digital through. I think orgasm is you drop a lot of pressure between you and the kind of membrane, that psychic membrane that connects you to the universe. It's like an equalization. If you think of the pressure as being this pressure pushing out, to press back against the pressure going in, what if you could just equalize that?
Hmm.
And it's also physically incarnating, but when it's connected to a phony fantasy, 5 minute badly lit, poorly acted video, that's pretty discarnated. And the phony girlfriends on OnlyFans making a lot of money. There's 1 million sexual presenters on OnlyFans, 2 million users, 2 million presenters. Half of them are adult only. Phony girlfriends with
I mean,
chatbots.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Imagine people, yeah, what they do now. They could go home, strap on the VR glasses, go to strip clubs, in their mind,
Oh
and
God.
right, all that stuff,
Oh, I
right?
haven't tried those yet. Have
No,
you?
no, I never actually want. I never want to touch them. I never want to be around it. And
Uh,
I have my virtual reality glasses right here,
yeah, right.
but it would be cool to try once. But yeah, but it's kind of like,
Yeah,
you have
probably wait
enough.
5 years till it's real good
Yeah.
and not get
Well,
the meta version.
so Eric, I'd also just want to ask you, what about the planets? Because I know that's a huge topic, but wasn't there some kind of planetary alignment recently, some kind of parade of planets, or
Oh,
like
it's
is it?
forming.
Oh, okay.
It's forming. It's pretty strong now, but we have two major conjunctions coming up in Aries. Rare. The last time one of them happened was in 71, 72. Chiron conjunct Eris. It's complicated to get into this, but I have a lot of writing about it. So just bang a
Okay.
comment or email Planet Waves, one of the email addresses.
Okay.
And the other one is in Aries. It is Saturn. Well, Chiron raises awareness and raises awareness of healing. Eris is kind of instigator of chaos.
Hmm.
So there is a reckoning coming
Hmm.
as these two meet in a conjunction that only happens twice in Aries every 500 years. So the last time it happened was in the Gutenberg era. Okay. The next one is a conjunction of Saturn, the Lord of form, boundaries, structures, governments, the ego structure, boundaries. I said that. What's another way to think of Saturn? Time management, chronological
Mm.
time, joining with Neptune, the dissolver, in Aries. So this is the possibility for total reformation of quote unquote identity. I don't like that concept very much, but
Mm.
let's imagine it means more than we say that it means. It's not about the button that you wear, or what your letter is on the
Mm.
LGBTQ flag, right? That's like,
Mhm.
if you be happy if you don't have to rely on that to tell you who you are. If you're,
Mhm.
congratulations. Um, and the Chiron, the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries is, I think we found Kirsti Melto in Finland. Uh, I believe we found 4 instances in Aries going back to 1 BC.
Wow.
1 BC. We use two programs. We use Solarfire and Rial, two kind of professional, and they only go back to they only go back to 1 BC. You can't go. I'm sure with other programs you could, but not 2,000 years is plenty. 4 times, and never as powerfully as it will be in the spring 25 to spring 26. So we are in for a wild ride, but there's 2 versions of 2025. And I'm going to write this as a promo pitch for the Awakening soon. The ideas for the promos are few and far between. I wish I was a better ad man. I'd make so much more money. But here's the pitch. There are 2 versions of 2025. One is the chaos we're going to see in society, and with that we're seeing they're doing ice raids in New York and Chicago. We don't need any of this, but it's just throwing the Christians to the lions. Basically, it's just more digital chaos, and all that's going to happen, all of the weirdness and chaos in society. That's one part of this astrology, but the other part of this astrology is what looks to me like the most astounding opportunity to grow into yourself that I have ever seen. I mean, and I've been reading these charts pretty much every day now for like 31 years.
Wow.
And I'm always looking for the growth opportunities. And this is really incredible. But it's happening at this time where it's like the worst of times in one place, in the kind of collective world, but in the individual world, there's never been more promise to snap out of it and like claim yourself, completely claim yourself, and like, you know, get a hold of who you are and do what's important to you and do what's right for you.
Wow. Wow.
That's my take. So 2 versions of 2025, 26.
I love that. And I think, there's so much to be taken away from that. And like they say, with it's always darkest before the dawn. And you can see with the rollout of these cancer injections, the gene therapy, or whatever you want to call it, the AI, you can create a new form out of the chaos of health that's happening right now with the cancer of all
Yeah.
these young children who've been injected with
I
cancerous things, right? But we can also say no to that and form a new body, a new mind, and
look, Mark and Sam Bailey, I listened to their thing last night on the sham of the healthcare system.
Hmm.
How there's no way they cannot show that it helps society. The entire thing, that it helps certain individuals. Fantastic video on the Sam Bailey channel.
Okay.
It's probably still subscriber only. They always release the videos a few days later. So what happened in 2020 woke up more people to the sham than anything that had ever happened. So there's been a kind of a groundswell of awareness. The leaders from that previous movement, 90% of them are nuts. They're to me, they're on the level that Fauci was in 2020, pushing the same horseshit. So we're going to need a whole new leadership crop.
Hmm.
So there's room at the top, my brother.
Oh yeah, thanks. Wait,
And
which
people need
leaders
your
are we talking?
information. And I'm gonna tell the Baileys about you. I may have tried that once, and you didn't really shine in your milieu, but you did fantastic as an interviewer.
No,
But you
thank
got a
you.
lot of materials. You've got a lot of materials.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure.
It's been a
And
party. Best
yeah,
phone call ever.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So yeah, listeners, if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. So you can leave a comment or reach out to Eric at Planet Waves, and maybe tell listeners where they can find you also.
Yeah, all the Planet Waves websites, planetwaves.net, planetwaves.fm. .org. We'll put links in. We're going to put this up on like 5 different video platforms. I think we're probably YouTube safe because after all, we're only discussing Marshall McLuhan, who is an English professor. Somebody once said he wasn't an English professor; he was Canadian. Like, no.
Yeah, I know.
Shakespeare. T.S. Eliot, that that kind
Yeah.
of English professor. And by the way, the internet has a way of eating humor. It's way
Mm,
too damn serious. And so any humor, this is why people love memes and cat videos so much.
yeah.
I mean, I'm all for cat videos. They're like some of the best stuff on the internet. I get going on cat videos, and I've watched like 10 of them, and I think, wow, I've just watched 10 cat videos. The cat opening the door for the
Yeah.
dog,
Yeah.
those kind of videos, and so forth.
Well, hey, thanks for bringing some humor because I tend to be pretty serious too. So I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks everyone also for listening. And yeah, see you next time.
Yeah, and let's continue with well, we've got other conversations. We should keep developing the EMF theory and then the chemical connection. And then with the cannabis one, we could have a monthly series easily. So maybe.
There's so much to talk about, seriously. And you're making, I've always known a lot of these things, but what you've, the thing about sexuality and orgasms and isolate that how the technology isolates, I think there's a lot to be extrapolated out of that. And it's something that two subjects that are very taboo and people don't even dare talk about, which is wireless or and orgasms. So
Yeah.
it's like, anyway, yeah.
Well, I've got
So
the orgasm thing down. I'm going to go on a campaign to get all of my wireless devices onto power strips so I can just cut them off. I
mm,
have a very complicated communication system in my apartment, in my office. I mean, this is just one part of it.
mm,
Here with all the routers are back there and then a power junction box down below and uh all the music is routed and all that. It's not that simple. So I've got to reroute the electrical to cut off the cordless phones at night, and so on and so on and so on. But I'm halfway there. I've got to go the rest of the way.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's and also too, like there's the dirty electricity filters that I got. You get a few of those, put those in because that will, like, if you ever do you have an AM radio, like a standard little AM radio?
Well, not lately, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can send you a video, but basically you'll see because there's a distortion of the electrical field that comes out of your wall. You have so
ah,
many of those devices. So if you
yep,
put
yep.
in a few of those filters,
Do you have a product list on your website?
yeah, and like the filters, I don't get any credit for it, but I can send you yeah, I'll just send you
Let's
yeah,
talk
I'll
about
send
the
you
stuff. People should need to know where to find it. Maybe we can do even a product wrap one day.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I'll send you a link, but yeah, all the stuff is there.
Good.
Yeah.
Banana, tell her I said hi.
Yeah, I will. Oh, she says hello too.
Good, excellent.
Oh,
And
oh,
we'll
and
link to the previous discussion and anything else to add.
well, yeah, you were recording. I didn't.
Yeah, we've got it. It's cloud recording. It's going to be a little shitty, but we
Yeah.
can
All right.
probably upgrade it. We have Topaz
Okay.
that
Yeah.
can we can
Sorry, I forgot to hit
remaster it.
record.
That's fine. It's automatically recording in the cloud. But next time, I think if it records locally, it's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's fine. We've got Topaz, so we'll take it up a notch.
And what do you want to do? Because I'll release it on our podcast, right? Or how
Whenever
do
you
you want
want.
to
I'm
do
going to give this to Eli, and nobody cares when things come out.
it? Okay.
And I'll link back to all your stuff in all
Yeah.
of our
Whatever.
notes, and I'm going to bang this out on Substack, and we're going to make sure see we succeeded because you're watching this. We got it to you. We succeeded. Thank you,
That's
Eli,
right.
for producing in the background.
All right. Thanks,
Yeah,
Eric.
yeah, love.